Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of VCTV. I think we are going to have a fun episode today. We've been talking a little pre-show. We're a little late this morning because we've been having such a great discussion about everything, including today's topic, what's happening in Africa and what are the opportunities as well. We talked about everything from food to finance to so much more, and we want to share a little bit more of that with you as well here as we are live. And a big thank you to the Token team, to Hasmik and Maria for making today's episode possible. Without them, we couldn't make these shows happen. And I'm your host today, Kyle Ellicott. Let's jump right into investing opportunities within Africa. Joel, kick us off with a little intro and background for everybody.
Yeah, I'm normally based in Hong Kong, but because of COVID, I'm sitting here in the United States since about over a year ago. But we are a consumer and retail advisory firm. And we have done a lot of work in Africa over the last 10 years in the consumer and retail space. We've been there many times. I have teams on the ground. And I think we're quite excited about the opportunities in Africa, and we'll talk about it during the show.
All right. Love it. Tushar, welcome back as well. A little intro, a little background for everybody.
Yeah, myself, Tushar Kansal from Consultancy Ventures. We are venture advisors with the Loyal VC. That's a Canadian VC fund which has invested in 160 companies across 35 countries. We are closely networked with 35 global investors. We help guide investments not only into startups but also into VC funds. And myself, my background has been in Big Four at Deloitte and Touche. Have been part of the team at Brand Capital, which is India's largest VC fund, and also raised $2.5 billion for the Russian telecom company Sistema's India unit. Happy to be discussing this very nice topic today here with Kyle and others.
Absolutely. Last but not least, Vandana, welcome back. A little intro, a little background for everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. First of all, I would like to thank the entire team of Latokan VCTV for organizing these events wherein we get to interact with each other globally. And coming to a short intro about myself, I had my own family office in Singapore and Jakarta. I worked as an investment banker and advisor to family offices and angel investors in Jakarta, Indonesia, helping startups from a diverse background, from fintech, B2B tech, all the way to consumer startups. I was raising funds for them and providing them with a range of services, just as Convanto does today. And after 15 years of staying in Singapore and Jakarta, I came back to India. I did investments for a bit and then returned to advisory. That is when Convanto was founded. And today, Convanto is the most well-known boutique investment banks in India, led by a female founder. I'm also a venture advisor with Loyal VC, the INSEAD-led Canadian VC fund, having a core portfolio of over 160 investments in more than 35 countries. I'm also a partner with GST Venture Studios, a Silicon Valley-based venture builder. And over the years, I've arranged funding for startups and growth stage companies in diverse sectors like EdTech, FinTech, consumer B2C, B2B, agri-tech, health tech, food tech, disruptive and deep tech, as well as non-tech sectors. And I would recommend all of you to have a look at my website for the wonderful testimonials written by my clients. This month, I've been selected as the top 10 women leaders in wealth management 2021. And my brand Convanto has been selected as one of the top 10 brands in women entrepreneurs. And my expert opinion is often sought by leading business news channels and publications like VCTV, Business World. I've participated in 160 talks all over the world, which can be seen on YouTube and VCTV streaming sites. I'm connected with 300 investors globally. We are sector agnostic, and typically we do a $1 million to $25 million. And once again, thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. Thank you all for being here today as well. And I think we can all agree there's some great opportunities everywhere in the world, as we all are sitting here as both operators and investors. But more importantly, when we look at Africa, we know that there's a unique opportunity there when it comes to investing, as all industries are starting to rise and new ones are starting to form as well. Joel, why don't you kick us off and tell us what opportunities you're seeing within not just the region as a whole, but the continent itself. When you think about Africa, what do you see as opportunities, having done so much work there?
Well, I think, we primarily deal with sub-Saharan Africa as opposed to South Africa. So the comments are mostly about sub-Saharan Africa. And I think it's really a mixed bag from east to west. It depends on the country. We believe the biggest opportunity in sub-Saharan Africa is Nigeria. The reason it's because it has the largest population and a very, I would say, entrepreneurial culture. But it has a lot of problems as well. It has huge governance problems, infrastructure problems, and the like. But I think the most interesting investments in a market like Nigeria are those that help to solve some of these problems. So obviously, agriculture is still a very big opportunity, infrastructure of all kinds, technology, clearly those are the case. But one thing to understand is it's a very underdeveloped retail consumer culture, simply because of roads, the lack of commercial real estate development. So that has, obviously the delivery function technology comes to play. So the more fintech, the more digitization of the retail experience, the less you need to rely so much on infrastructure. People that have money don't want to really go out and drive because the traffic in a place like Lagos is unbearable, like it is in probably Delhi or Mumbai. So tech platforms have come up, obviously, to try to solve and make life much more convenient for middle-class consumers. So, I mean, that's a winded way of saying Africa's got a lot of people, it's got a lot of problems, but on the other hand, there's a lot of opportunities to solve. And we only look at the consumer and retail space and the digitization of that space in our portfolio. And we've worked with the largest Africa funds. And the biggest issue for them is there's always been a lack of who to invest in. There's not a plethora, there's not an overabundance of deals on the table. So you see them fighting for deals, and that raises the valuation beyond where it should, simply because there are not that many good companies in each of these markets. I mean, that's a summary.
Yeah, and going one level deeper, I mean, in talks of consumer buckets all industries. Are there maybe one or two in particular that you see as a big opportunity that people should be paying attention to now? I mean, we've talked endlessly about the areas of fintech, even digital assets. We've talked about new food sources as well. I mean, there's plenty of them, but do you have maybe one or two that you could share a little bit more in the consumer space?
Well, I mean, I think at the end of the day, I mean, Nigeria, I'm just talking about Nigeria for the moment, but because the cell phone penetration is so high now, as I mentioned before, Kyle, I think these markets are pretty much following the pathway of China and Indonesia to some extent, meaning that the tech part of it is going to be probably more prominent than it is in the United States. So, the whole issue of paying without credit cards, cashless payments, like was very common in Asia, is what's happening in most of these African markets. And the first time I was in Africa was in 2014 in Kenya. And I think I mentioned this before, but using analog phones, people were paying for stuff, with Safaricom. So this stuff has a long history, and most of these people don't have bank accounts. The broad middle class does, but the majority of people don't have bank accounts. So this is a solution. So I think one of the biggest opportunities, obviously, is dealing with bankless people, as has been the case in India as well. So these markets all follow similar trends. It's just that India is probably way ahead of where Africa is today.
Tushar, would you agree, or any additional thoughts on that point? And then Vandana, I want to come to you next.
No, Joel's views are very sagacious, and his depth of experience about the African markets. So basically, when we look at Africa from the Indian perspective, the biggest deal we see is Airtel's acquisition of Zain Telecom for $9.5 billion almost 15 years back. And Airtel kept on trying to turn it around against a big competition from MTN, the leader in telecom space in Africa. And it took them almost 12 years to finally, start making a profit and have a meaningful business in terms of returns. But having said that, Africa faces the same problem which Middle East used to face. We looked at Middle East as an oil market and nothing beyond oil. But the oil market dependent countries in Middle East, they the people there are quite rich, so they have the spending capacity. So those countries in Africa which are heavy on minerals, and Africa is known for minerals, they have the capacity to pay. They have the purchasing power parity. And there was a report by UN Conference on Trade and Development which said that Africa had the highest rate of return on inflows of foreign direct investment as compared to Asia, Latin America, and Caribbean. So the profits are there, and there is something about Asian and African jump in terms of technology. So the pagers never happened in Africa. It straight away jumped to mobiles. So they didn't do the entire curve. And but the adoption of technology with the presence of internet, it's people are very aware. So Kenya and Nigeria, they are leaders in wallet banking, mobile based banking, mobile wallets essentially, not banking. And so the potential is there to actually do a lot from an investor's perspective in Africa. uh, Happy to discuss more in subsequent points.
No, I think that's a good rounding out of Joel's points. And Vandana, I want to come to you next. I mean, anything addition to add on to Tushar or Joel, but even in your own experience, I mean, we've talked, almost 200 companies now you've invested in around the world. I'm going to guess a few of those have been either focused or based in Africa as well. So, furthering again, anything to add on to Joel and Tushar, but then more so your thoughts and opportunities.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. So, in the recent years, the African startup market has received an influx of capital from both local and international investors, and the numbers have grown significantly every year. Now, TechCrunch had done a comparative analysis between the investments in Africa in 2015 and 2019, and they had grown from $400 million to a whooping $2 billion in only 4 years, according to Partech Africa. The African continent is now a fertile land for unicorn companies and many other promising young ventures. Now, because of the pandemic, the total funding last year was lower than 2019, but the total number of deals that were closed increased by a huge margin from 250 deals in 2019 to 360 deals in 2020. Now, when it comes to the industries or sectors, leading the closed deals, it turns out that fintech, health tech, e-commerce, and clean tech received the highest amounts of funding. Among the African countries competing for, the most funding, Nigeria, Kenya, and Egypt were at the top of the list of the countries that saw the largest share of investments. Now, talking about unicorns, there are 4 startups which have exceeded the $1 billion valuation in Africa. There is Flutterwave, a leading payment software for business from abroad, which is the most recent addition, and it created a lot of buzz in March 2021, announcing a whooping $175 million Series C round, officially crossing the line of $1 billion in valuation. Then the Jumia Group is another unicorn from Africa continent. It became a unicorn in 2016, and it is an e-commerce giant also known as the Amazon of Africa. Fowry, another fintech startup with its roots in Egypt, is different from its fellow unicorns in its age and experience, and it was founded in 2008 and eventually achieved the 1 billion mark in 2020. And fueled by the pandemic and increased need of payment systems to keep up with the African people's spending habits. And lastly, InterSwitch is another fintech startup like Flutterwave and Fowry, with its roots in Nigeria, and it reached its unicorn title when Visa acquired a minor stake in the company in 2019. And since it was founded in 2002, it had more experience and hold over the market to establish dominance in largely cash-based economy of Africa. So, you can clearly see there are a lot of unicorns there. It's a growing market, and it's a really upcoming market for investors to invest in.
Absolutely.
Kyle,
Yeah,
just,
please, Joel.
I just want to make one point. I mean, the really simple way to look at Africa is what's happened in Indonesia, what's happening in Vietnam, what's happening in Southeast Asia is happening in Africa, just maybe 5 years, 10 years later. So and what's happening in India. So if you look where the investments went in those markets, e-commerce, cashless payments, digitization of retail, all that stuff, smart local entrepreneurs in Africa are doing the same thing. And some of them are Indian, second, third generation Indian from that are Africans.
The Chinese also.
And the Chinese, yeah. The other thing is, you're exactly right. If you get on an airplane and you fly to Kenya or Nigeria, which I do regularly, not recently, but but not in the last year. But almost everyone on the plane is Chinese. Right. So the Chinese are there for one thing: to build out the infrastructure and to promote Chinese soft power, to build the ports, to build the railroads, to build the airports, to build all that stuff. So that America is nowhere need to be seen, except for maybe some World Bank people around. So I mean, if you look at what's happening in Southeast Asia and China and India, that's what's happening in Africa. It's just slower, less entrepreneurship, less educated people to be able to execute it. And so if you just follow that path and look for, the trends are the same. Just look for the companies that are doing good stuff. The only other thing I'd say is, very quickly, I have a relationship with a Norwegian development fund called Norfund, which basically is not looking to make money so much as invest to assist local governments. And they've invested a lot of money in the food service sector. The reason is they want to promote agriculture, right? So basically clean agriculture. So that is a huge opportunity. I mean, instead of just killing cows all the time and chickens or whatever. So, but not necessarily plant-based, but the diet in Africa isn't very good. And so some of these government development funds that, for emerging markets actually invest in food service retail because they want to promote the agricultural sector, which, obviously is way behind. I mean, if a place like Vietnam, even though the per capita income isn't very high, it's still an agricultural-based country, and people aren't having trouble finding food to eat, and it's relatively cheap. But that's not the case. African diet is heavily starch-based. It's not all that healthy. So, excuse me.
No, thank you, Joel. And where can everyone find you to continue the conversation? You answered my next question, so I'll figure out how to throw that one to you. Yeah.
All right. Well, you can find me on LinkedIn as Joel Silverstein, East West Hospitality Group, or ewhospitality.com, and go to the contact page, and you can find me very easily.
Thank you very much, Joel. Vandana, to you, last pieces of advice for those looking to make their first or follow-on investments in new regions within Africa, and then where can everyone find you?
So I think there are some challenges of investing in African market. The main challenge for investors is the lack of bankable projects. There is an oversupply of lenders, but having money to lend cannot be the catalyst for development. There must be some good projects, and investors have reported that Africa's so-called infrastructure funding gap is less a shortfall in funding and more a gap in sufficient legal and regulatory architecture. And having the capacity to identify which projects are available and in which countries was also raised as a crucial challenge. And this reflects the view that Africa fails to attract investment not because of any perceived riskiness, but because there's a lack of understanding in the market. And other crucial issues, include brain drain when young and educated people migrate away from the region. More than half of the entrepreneurs come from outside of Africa. And the election cycle, which interrupts fund distribution and financing economies in their own currency. And this remains especially a problematic, problem as interest rate differentials continue to incentivize debt being in dollars. So, this is what are some of the challenges that I feel, and I could be reached out on my LinkedIn handle or my website, www.convanto.com.
Thank you very much, Vandana. Tushar, same to you. Last piece of advice, and where can you be found online?
So my piece of advice for those seeking to make returns in Africa is that they have a abundance of labor, and they have land which is freely available, and they have a lot of minerals out there, and education is catching up in especially the southern part of the continent, and a youthful population. We say in India that our median age of our population is 29 years. So probably Africa is the only other place where it is even lower than that. And infrastructure is a big constraint, and regulatory issues, corruption. I know of people who, like, you just pay something at the customs, and it's very common out there. And but having said that, things are improving, and as 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 we were discussing earlier, that the opportunities to invest are still less, but entrepreneurship is catching up. So I like to see the glass half full, and I can be reached on LinkedIn at Tushar Kansal Consultancy, and or my website consultancy.com. And thank you so much, Kyle and Joel and Vandana, for the exciting discussion today.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you all very much as well for the thoughts and insights. And again, the great discussion furthermore. And to our audience, thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you heard, make sure you click like, share, and subscribe on today's episode. Also, and make sure to reach out to each and every one of the investors on today's panel. They would all love to hear from you, including myself, but please do add context where you heard us, where you met us, and what you would like to continue the conversation about. A big thank you to the LaToken team, to Hasmik and Maria for making today's episode possible. Until tomorrow, we'll see you back here with more VCTV. Take care, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Thank